Kwe Nindaluizi Pam Palmater. I'm honored to be here on Mississauga territory, and thank you all for being here. This is amazing. Every single one of you, by being here, is contributing not just to the Idle No More movement, but for everything that is important to us as human beings in this world. And I think it's so appropriate that this event is being held at Ryerson, because Ryerson is a unique university amongst the many great universities. It is not a university that just tolerates diversity or accepts certain numbers of students from categories. This is a university that embraces social justice and encourages its professors and academics and students to give back to the community. Otherwise, I would never have been able to do anything that I did during the whole massive phase of the Idle No More movement. It was the President Sheldon Levy and everyone at Ryerson saying, go, just go and do it, go and do it. And we'll accept that you won't be here for a little while, but we'll be ensuring that all of us working together is doing something to contribute to the human condition. And that's what's important. It's not just about tuition fees and getting degrees. It's something important to community members and everybody in Canada. And that's essentially the heart of the Idle No More movement. Because as much as we celebrated all the singing and dancing that went on during the height of the Idle No More movement, and as much as we celebrated holding hands and talking about these things and all the alliances that came together between Canadians and First Nations people, the fact of the matter is the status quo continues to kill our people. And not just in an inadvertent way, not just by accident, not just by policies gone wrong. Every single decision made by government officials in this country have known results. Every time they pick up a funding policy, they can tell you with precision, when we don't fund water this year, this many people are going to die from contaminated water. They can tell you when we don't fund housing, here's how many people are going to die. When we continue to chronically underfund human services, like water and food, here's how many children under the age of 8 are going to kill themselves. That's the issue that we're here for. There's lots of things to celebrate about us coming together, but this is serious business. This is lives at stake. And we used to just think it was First Nation lives at stake, and it is right now. First Nations have the worst socioeconomic conditions of any group in this country, and over the last 20 years, they've gotten progressively worse. Yet all of the media and government propaganda talks about it as if we're all getting better. We're on the road to recovery. Well, they should come here and stand before the people, stop taking extended vacations from Parliament, and account for their track records. And what is their track record? There has never been, ever in the history of federal, provincial, municipal government departments, a single department that year after year since its very creation has failed its mandate every single year. Their mandate is on the internet for anyone to look at, to improve the social conditions of First Nations, to ensure healthy people, to build economic prosperity. They get billions of dollars to fund thousands of bureaucrats to do that single thing, and year after year after year they fail. Yet when they account to Parliament, they don't even give Canadians the truth. How are you, as our allies, how is the public supposed to rally around First Nations and say, there's an injustice going on here, but don't worry, we have your back, when they don't even know the facts? When the minister can stand before Treasury Board and say, there's no housing crisis in this country for First Nations. That's a myth. We actually increased housing stock by 50%. Everything's okay. The problem must be with Chief Spence. She must be corrupt. Meanwhile, once the damage is already done, you have the Auditor General looking at the books and saying, well, in fact, you didn't increase the housing stock by 50%. You reduced funding by 30%. That doesn't equal more houses. In fact, the housing situation is getting progressively worse. How are we supposed to combat that? And the how is every single one of you sitting here today. Every single tweet that you issue on your cell phones tonight, every single post you put on Facebook, every time a report from the Auditor General comes out and you forward that and you circulate it and you do the best you can to inform other people, that's combating the government propaganda and misinformation that's out there. And I'm not saying that there isn't more than enough rhetoric to go around. First Nation organizations have rhetoric, government organizations have rhetoric, but I don't care about any of that. What is needed here is a fact-based discussion. And the facts will always point to both the problems and the solutions at the end of the day. So when the government tries to deflect responsibility for their purposeful chronic underfunding that leads to our premature deaths by anywhere between 7 and 30 years less than Canadians, there's an answer to that. When they try to deflect and say all First Nations chiefs are millionaires and that's the root cause of the problem, there's an answer to that, and it's called the facts. And you look at the reports and the studies that have been done, and you'll find there's never in the history of this country been a millionaire chief. But let's just pretend there was. How many chiefs are in this country? 615. Let's say they all get $1 million, $615 million. That's not enough to build the homes that are required in Attawapiskat. So it's certainly not enough to solve the chronic poverty that's in First Nations. And this just didn't appear overnight. This is something our ancestors have been dealing with since Canada was created, and they decided that the way we were going to have our relationship wasn't on nation-to-nation treaty relationships anymore. That it was going to be based on 2 policy objectives that have never changed since they instituted it. The first one is to acquire all the Indigenous lands and resources. That's not paranoia or propaganda. We've seen that happen. First Nations have less than 1% of all the traditional lands they used to have. But the second one, policy objective, was to reduce financial obligations by way of agreements and treaties. And they've been very calculating about doing that, making sure there's not enough funding on reserve so that people move off reserve and lose their way into the cities. Making sure there's not enough funding for education, then you don't have people trying to start their own businesses, trying to start their own companies. You can keep people impoverished with those kinds of policies. But here's the thing, you're not saving anybody any money. In fact, it costs Canadians more money to keep First Nations impoverished than it does to just give them equal funding. It costs $100,000 to keep one First Nation man in jail for 1 year. 60 grand for a 4-year education. And what do you think he could do with that? We know, the statistics tell us what he can do with that. Provide for his family. If nothing else was done in this country, but you took all of the money that Canada spends on surveilling people like me and Cindy Blackstock and now all of you in this room, and you took all of that money they put just on surveillance, following us around, and I know they're in here somewhere, and you put all of that money just into First Nation education alone, and all you did was just equalize First Nation education. Forget housing, forget food, water, health, just education. That would bring $179 billion in gross domestic product back to Canada. Canadians would be billionaires. Why on earth do we not do that? Cindy Blackstock has said to 1 million people that she spoke to, for every dollar you put into a First Nation child, you save $7 down the road. I challenge any one of you to have a better investment than that. There's no stock, bond, or lottery ticket that's going to give you a better investment. So it doesn't even make economic sense to be doing what we're doing. The argument about land claims and treaties costing too much money and why would we bother resolving those? Well, independent economic analysis by banks and companies have all came to the same conclusion. Not only Would it not cost you money to solve treaties and land claims and to resolve them equitably? It would make you money. It would generate investment. So for all of those economically minded people, we better start making better economic decisions. And that's if you have no moral sense of justice whatsoever. That's if you don't care about Canada being a democracy or that we all get the opportunity to live the good life. Because it's not just First Nations that are in this category either. Poverty in Canada is on the rise. Homelessness is on the rise. Child poverty is on the rise. Yet, the salaries of CEOs in this country are also on the rise. The average salary of large corporate CEOs, anywhere from $7 to $17 million. One CEO in this country makes $45 million. So don't ever tell me there is not enough to go around. But this isn't just about money, because we're all grasping for the low-hanging fruit, the oil, the diamonds, the gold. The two most valuable resources in the very near future are going to be two basics: drinkable water and farmable land. And I guarantee you, if those two things don't exist, none of us will exist. So when First Nations are on the front line, whether you agree or like their songs and dances, whether you agree with their politics or not, when they're on the front line defending the lands and waters, they're on the front lines defending your children and grandchildren. They're giving them a right to live. And I understand that the whole decolonization process can be very uncomfortable. People don't want to hear uncomfortable things. But this isn't a guilt trip process that we're involved in. This is a how to be thankful for one another process. The fact that Canadians benefit from the dispossession of Indigenous people. And Indigenous people aren't saying, Canadians, we don't like you, we don't want to work with you, because we're good treaty partners. We believe in the nations-to-nation relationship. Or we wouldn't keep extending our hands saying, please work with us. What we're doing is something that's going to benefit everybody across every sphere. Since when do we have a government that prorogues whenever it feels like it? That whenever it wants to prepare for an election? That whenever it has to deal with difficult issues? And I'm not partisan, I don't vote. I don't vote in federal elections or provincial elections, and I can tell you why if you want to know, but this isn't a partisan thing. This is a Canada thing. What kind of Canada do you want to be a part of? Because there's a constitution and there's something called a democracy and rule by the people. But here's the trick. Democracies don't work by only protecting half your constitution, just the bits and pieces that you like. Aboriginal and treaty rights and our inherent rights and our right to live, to exist, is also protected in that Constitution. And it is just as much a part of this country as the right to equality. And it's time that that right to equality, that sense of social justice, that we all came together to defend it, because I guarantee you there are no more powerful people than the people sitting in this room if we got together and all exercised our voices. Think about the strength and the pride Canadians should have in Indigenous peoples. How strong we are after everything. We have survived everything that has been thrown at us, and we're still here to say, despite the forced sterilizations of our women, despite residential schools, despite the torture and abuse, the scalping laws, the chronic underfunding, the theft of our lands and resources, despite screwing us over and over and over and over again by successive prime ministers, we're still here saying, guess what? I'm Mi'kmaq and I'm proud of it. I'm Cree and I'm proud of it. I'm Ojibwe and I'm proud of it. And that's something that we can share. That's something that we can build on with Canadians. Because that's what social justice is all about. We have a justice system, but they've forgotten the word social that goes with it. We have a legal system, but they've forgotten the rule of law that goes with it, that the laws don't just apply to the people in these territories, they also apply to governments. You simply can't make decisions that will result in someone's death. It's called manslaughter, murder. And the only way we're going to decolonize and deal with this and move together forward to protect all of our future generations is if we bring all of the facts to light, even the stuff we don't want to know. That it's not just about murdered and missing Indigenous women, that it's also about traded Indigenous women on ships. That it's not just about a history of residential schools, but it's about a present of stealing Indigenous kids and putting them in foster care at rates higher than residential schools. Canadians aren't the ones making these decisions. It's the politicians that are making these decisions. So we have no time. We don't even have 5 minutes for guilt or feeling bad or being uncomfortable. We just have to deal with that. Our ancestors went through much worse. If our ancestors can suffer what they suffered, then we can suffer a little bit of uncomfortableness in protecting this country for all of us to share. And I think that's the most important message. That First Nations, although portrayed as burdens to taxpayers, as lazy and unable to take care of their own affairs, nothing could be further from the truth. Because those same Indigenous people who have been wrongfully prosecuted, taken on starlight tours, forcibly sterilized, their children taken away, they're the ones on the front line saying, we're going to stand up for everybody. And so that makes First Nations Canadians' last best hope at making sure we actually have a future, protecting all the lands and resources and waters for everybody, and ensuring that along the way, we're not also killing Americans and people that live in Europe, because all the decisions we make here impact the entire world. Look at the Mackenzie River Valley Basin. That single basin alone impacts the entire world, the sea temperatures, plants, animals, birds. But because it's located in our country, if we screw with environmental laws, we screw with the futures of everybody in this world, not even just Canadians. And I think we have the power to do it. I don't even think we have the power to do it, I know. Look at what happened with Idle No More. With no money, no political organization, no staff, no offices, we unilaterally came together as allies, as treaty partners, as nation-to-nation partners. And we said, enough is enough. And it was good, and it inspired people all over the world. But every movement has to change, it has to grow. We got the attention, now what? There's a responsibility. Once you know what's happening, you're purposely making a choice, I'm just going to let it happen, or I'm going to do something about it. And that's hard, because the doing something about it, most of us don't even know what to do. But there's so many things that don't cost a single cent. Sending a tweet, sending a report, attending rallies like this, discussing this with your family. Canadians have so much wealth and power and influence and education. Think of all of the corporations, think of all the businesses, all the boards that you sit on, all the people that you know. That's a huge amount of influence that you can use for good. And by good, I'm talking about living in the future, making sure that our kids can breathe and drink water and eat food. It's nothing more than that. This isn't about power tripping, it's not about succeeding from Canada, it's not about carving off and floating away somewhere. It's nothing like that. It's about the basics of human survival, something that many people have been ignoring for a long time. But now we have an opportunity. Now the government is actually worried, not just about the Idle No More movement, but about the media taking notice and asking different questions, about the public self-educating. Every time you see a headline in the newspaper, you don't automatically believe it. When they say Chief Teresa Spence is mismanaging, go and find out for yourself. Go on her website and look at all of her audited financial statements for the last 5 years. And then make up your minds. And we're smart enough to do that. We have to accept the fact that the media is not like it used to be in the old days. Not all of it. There's some really good media. But it's not like the old days where they would report facts and we would come to our own decisions. Now, almost every single outlet is an opinion-based outlet. Whether it be TV or radio, we don't get to think for ourselves anymore. So it's up to us to actually do the fact-based searching and finding, and we can all help each other do that. And I wish I could give one of those inspiring speeches that'll say everything is perfect and everything is wonderful, and I'm just not one of those people that do that. I'm kind of hard reality person. But to me, we're never going to be able to implement solutions. We're never going to be able to move forward. We're never going to be able to solve these issues unless we address all the things that we don't want to know. Because you can't solve any problem unless you know what the problem is. And we have to be able to account for it. So when I challenge Stephen Harper to a public debate on their record on First Nation issues, I expect the leader of a democratic country to step forward and say, I'm going to account to everybody.
He's a coward.
But even though that's on my Christmas list, I think I probably won't get that. So in the meantime, that's up to us to do that. And it's going to be hard. There's going to be lots of challenges and confrontations, and sometimes, you know, the media just want to keep asking you the same question, but you can always get back to the facts. You can always deal with these issues in a good way. I don't care any question. People can ask me any question about anything on a First Nation issue, and I will never take offense, no matter how it's worded, because the important thing is that everybody else hears the answer. Otherwise, those comments just get made and there's never an answer. And you have a role in educating the rest of this country in doing that. So I think I've probably gone over my 15 minutes, but Idle No More and the spirit of Idle No More and what it was intended to do, it's not about the name, it's not about who's in it, who's not in it. If you want to change it to Indigenous nationhood, if you want to change it to the Joe Blow movement, it doesn't matter. Those things aren't important. What's important is that we keep the spirit of the movement alive, and don't think for a second that just because you don't see Idle No More rallies and protests in the malls every day anymore, that there isn't things happening. But every movement has to change, from bringing awareness to getting attention to strategizing and planning and getting ready for the next level. And we're getting ready for the next level, and we need your help to do that. And that's going to mean First Nations withdrawing from certain processes that on its face look good. Or it's going to mean First Nations saying, no, you know what, in this territory, mining's a no-go, and it can never go because it will permanently destroy this lake. In other areas, it might mean, okay, mining's okay under certain circumstances, so long as environmental protections are taken. But the fact of the matter is, First Nations have a right to say no to what happens in this territory. And believe me when I say when they do, they're doing it for all of us. This isn't just a money game. This isn't just about resources. It's about protecting all of us. And if every single one of you could tweet or Facebook or spread the word to someone, that would be a huge, huge help. And support people in the movement. There's been a lot of criticisms about how people participate, when they participate, what are their potential reasons for doing it. Who cares? We can fight with our neighbors tomorrow. I can battle with my sister another day. That girl who stole my boyfriend, well, I can deal with her another time. What matters now is protecting the lives of our future generations, and we can get back to fighting once we've done that. So hopefully you'll join us and keep this movement strong.